This is Chronicle. It was directed by Josh Trank and was a massive hit, making around $126 million on its about $15 million budget. Now take a gander at this. This is 2015's Fantastic Four, also directed by Josh Trank, but unlike Chronicle, this movie bombed at the box office and was pretty much absolute buns. But what happened? How did a movie with unknown characters smoke a bigger budget film with well-known comic book characters directed by the same guy? Chronicle and Fantastic Four both have an almost horror movie feel to them. Some scenes that come to mind are when the group get back from Planet Zero after shit took a left turn, and Reed finds himself stuck under some debris. He looks over and finds Johnny just on fire, so he thinks he's packed up, and he hears his friend Ben yelling for him, so he crawls over to him and finds him under a bunch of rocks, and then turns around to see his leg all stretched out before passing out. All that combined with the lighting, the atmosphere, and the music, that was some freaky shit. And in Chronicle, there was a similar scene when the three friends found the glowing rock thing and started bleeding from the nose. And unlike in most superhero movies where the main character gets their powers and they're cooling off rip and just need to learn to control them, in this movie, they're actually really struggling. Johnny is freaking out and sounds like he's in pain. Reed wakes up not knowing where he is and finds his limbs stretched out for like 5 feet and Ben yelling for help again. And when he gets over to Ben, he finds he's a massive rock, and Ben's freaking out, begging for help, and he looks like he's stuck. It's pretty freaky. Another good scene to show how horror was involved was when Dr. Doom escaped and he was going on a rampage. The lights were flashing, there was no background music, and everyone was separated and walking around on their own trying to figure out what was going on while hearing screams and dead bodies all over the lab. Now, I personally like these scenes, but for the majority of people, when you're going to see a comic book movie and the previous films were brightly colored, lighthearted, and fun, you don't expect a dark, grounded horror film, which was the problem because that's what Trank wanted, but the writers in the studio were like, no, that sounds like trash, just make it like the Avengers. If this movie wasn't about the Fantastic Four, and instead it was an original with unknown characters just like Chronicle was, this probably would have done great. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But that's not the only problem with this film. After everyone gets their powers and are in the lab, Reed breaks free and then dips out. And then we skip ahead an entire fucking year. What the fuck? They just got their powers, so we miss seeing them come to terms with them and learn how to control them and actually use them. Imagine Spider-Man gets his powers, and instead of him learning how to use them and him fighting crime early on, we just jump ahead a year and skip all that. Or when Doctor Strange is learning to do magic, imagine we just skip ahead to him being a pro already. Or, in Chronicle, after they get their powers, we just jump ahead to Andrew losing his marbles. It doesn't work. We miss everything. We miss the struggle and them learning how to use their powers. And most importantly, we miss the first few days of them realizing they have powers and what they do with them and how they react. Another good example is Mark getting his powers in Invincible. There's a whole arc of him training to control them and him failing at being a hero for a while. Yeah, Fantastic Four just skips all that. Now this time jump can work for certain films, but it doesn't work for this film. Why doesn't it? When we jump forward, we don't see the characters develop. We don't get to see Ben come to terms with being a pile of rocks or how he dealt with his best friend leaving him. We don't get to see Johnny learn to love his powers and want to use them to be somebody. We don't see any of the characters do anything. We just get filled in with dialogue on what's been happening.
He's been active in covert operations with a 100% success rate.
Nobody wants that. That's lame as f***. And with that, we don't have as much connection with the characters. In Chronicle, we watch them all get their powers together and watch them learn how to use them. And during this time, they bond and we see how each of their lives are different. We see Andrew's life at home, and so we understand why he turns evil at the end. And when characters like Steve and Andrew die, it's actually heavy. The 1-year time jump was ass and arguably the worst part about this movie. But to my knowledge, they had to do this because reshoots were done because the studio was like, yo, this is not what we wanted. But either way, this all leads to my next point. Overall, this movie is boring as shit up until the last 20 minutes of it. Half the movie is the origin story, then it's about getting back to Planet Zero to cure them, even though basically everyone but Ben is chilling with their new powers, so I don't know what the point of that was. And the last bit of the movie is a rushed, poorly written, crappy ending. So overall, almost nothing of significance happens in this movie. This is one of those movies you could just throw on in the background, check up on it every once in a while, forget about it, and you're really not missing much. Because literally nothing happens. Which is unfortunate because the characters were cool, the actors were great, the CGI, in my opinion, looked good, especially Johnny. I thought he looked pretty sick with his flames. So it's unfortunate that we didn't get to see him do much. We saw him walking around while on fire, doing some training for a minute, and then he had like 2 minutes of screen time against Dr. Doom. And that's pretty much the same thing for every character. We saw Sue move some shipping containers, and we saw Ben on a monitor taking out a tank. That's about it. Now, if the plot itself was good, then we wouldn't need a Fast and Furious action-packed movie, but it wasn't. The movie is pretty much, we need to build this machine. They build the machine and go to the planet. They get the powers, and they need to build the machine again. They go to the planet again, and how convenient Dr. Doom is like 50 yards from where the machine teleports in at, even though he's been there living and thriving for over a year. And their goal of getting a cure is aborted to save him, which ends with him trying to end Earth because Earth is bad. Yeah, it's not very good. If you're gonna have a terrible plot, at least jam-pack it with action. I'd rather watch a nonsensical Fast and Furious film where Dom Toretto's on some Superman shit than whatever this was. Now compare that to Chronicle, where every scene isn't action-packed, but we learn more and more about the main characters, and we get to see Andrew's mental state slowly fall as he becomes more powerful.
You do not feel guilty when you squash a fly, and I think that means something.
Every minute of the movie you're locked in because something is happening at all times, whether it's them using their powers to mess with people, or them discovering something new with their powers.
Lying! No way! Bullshit! Yeah!
Or Andrew struggling at home with his mom dying and his dad being a dick.
What did you see? Just you being a loser.
Or the ending where everything pops off. Everything that's going on keeps us dialed in and builds up for the ending. I also find it funny that this low-budget found footage film has better action and a better plot than Fantastic Four. It's crazy. Anyways, Fantastic Four has all these great characters and does nothing with them, and I think the main reason for that is, again, Trank had his own vision for this film and the writers in the studio had a different one, so they all clashed and it all fell apart. But let's move on. Don't know if it was just me, but I really couldn't give a shit about these characters. The only two that had any substance to them were Ben and Reed, and that's not really saying much. None of them had any time together to build them up. They all met, they built the machine, and things took a left turn. That's really about it. I can't remember any moment where they I don't know how to explain it, built each other up, I guess. I don't know, the Avengers were all cool. They were all bros, sort of. But either way, we cared for the characters. But in this, they had no chemistry. Nothing happened that made us care for them. Now compare that to Chronicle, where we see them all become friends, we see them hang out and have fun and just broing down, we see them get real with each other, and we see them fall apart. We actually cared about them. Now this wasn't the actor's fault, it wasn't on them. Apparently Trank didn't even like Kate Mara because he wanted a different actress for the role, so I guess he was just hating on her on set all the time, and the script was just an absolute mess in general. But the point is, we don't know much about any of the characters, and we don't care much about any of the characters, so it just doesn't work out. It doesn't matter how you start, it matters how you finish.
That's called motherfucking bars!
In 2015's Fantastic Four took what it had, set it on fire, and threw it in the dumpster. Not like I had much going on in the first place, but you know what I mean. The last 20 minutes of this film is basically the only action we get, and it doesn't make up for the lacking plot. Firstly, their reasoning for going back to Planet Zero is to find a cure for themselves. Except none of them but Ben need or want to be cured. Well, that's what one would logically think, but they force characters like Sue Storm to want to be fixed for no reason.
We should use these powers to do something.
They're not powers. They're aggressively abnormal physical conditions that we're gonna fix.
Shut up, bitch!
Her powers aren't harming her in any way, and I'd find it hard to find a single person on Earth who would complain about having the ability to turn invisible and have force fields. But the plot must continue somehow. So they get to Planet Zero and find Dr. Doom, who, as I said earlier, is apparently 50 yards from the shuttle, even though he's been chilling there for over a year, so I guess he barely moved for a whole year. They bring him back, and boom, he's evil. He packs up Franklin Storm for no reason, and decides to destroy the Earth by overloading the system on the shuttle thing, which causes a black hole that swallows the Earth. Don't ask questions. The team pulls up, and I guess since they have powers now, they don't need to breathe oxygen, and they somehow beat the massively overpowered Dr. Doom by distracting him and hitting him into the space thing, which destroys him, even though it's shown he can pack anyone up just by looking at them. Again, don't ask questions though. Does this feel out of nowhere, rushed, and poorly written? Yeah. Did this feel like a good conclusion to a well-built-up story? No, it was neither of those things. Was this all Josh Trank's fault? Not entirely. Unlike with Chronicle, where he had a small budget and the creative freedom to make it how he wants, he was working with a bigger budget, with well-known characters, and a short deadline. And since he wanted to do it one way, and the writers in the studio wanted to do it a different way, it kind of all fell apart. Would this have been good if Trank was able to do it his way? Possibly, but when you want to ignore the source material and make an original story with already well-known comic book characters, it's probably not going to work. People are going to this movie expecting the Fantastic Four. You can't really make something else out of these characters. I think if Trank, instead of working on this, did another original film with lower budget like Chronicle, it would probably hit. But this wasn't it. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this. If you haven't already, check out my video on Chronicle. Also, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Let me know what videos you guys want to see next. But that's all I've got, so I'll see you in the next one.